Hey everybody, I am Stacy. I am the owner and artist of New Creations by Stacy. Give me just a sec here. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure we're live before I get started. This is a little impromptu here, but I did on the very first live we did on this on the Dixie Belle Paint Company page. I did say that I would come back on whenever I got ready to age it out, and unfortunately, and I'll bring you in so you can see here in a minute, but I did add some molding that was from Redesign with Prima, so I was not able to do this live on the Dixie Belle page. So I just decided to jump on today so you can kind of get an idea of how to go about the aging out process. And I'm still not seeing that we're live, so give me just a second here. Oh, perfect. There we go. All right, so if you guys jump on, just say, hey, where you're watching from. Just to give you a little information, the products that we're going to be using are in the description for the live video. If you guys watch on replay, just say hashtag replay. As well as I do have my affiliate link listed. If you wanted to purchase any of the products, if you are local, you can purchase them locally at the Rustic Willow. I'm an elite retailer there, and I also carry Redesign with Prima products. I am a retailer and a content creator for Redesign with Prima. And then also, if you look at the pinned post that I have several different places. You can catch all my videos in one place on my YouTube channel, as well as you can order through my affiliate link. You can go to my website, any of those things. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message anytime. I'm happy to answer anything. So let's go ahead and get started, because I do want to go ahead and glaze with you, as well as do the Besting Wax and the Dixie Dirt on here. And right now I have this at a couple different places, but if you go back and watch the first video, I did clean it with White Lightning, rinse that off with water, and then it was a heavy bleeder, so I did go ahead and put some Boss on here to block the bleed through. It is an antique cabinet, but to block the bleed through from the wood. And then I did paint it with the Silk All-in-One Mineral Paint, which does have a stain blocker in it. But this was definitely a heavy bleeder, and I was going with a really light color, so I wanted to make sure that that would not come through. So I put that one coat of Boss on, and this is 2 coats of the Endless Shore, which is kind of an antique white color. And so that's kind of where we're at now. Now I did go ahead. So silk has a built-in protectant. So each coat of silk is equivalent to 1 coat of protectant, as well as 1 coat of a stain blocker, and then the paint. So I did have that on here. However, it's still, silk is really nice, but it is still a little porous. Hey, I see some people jumping on now. Just say, hey, where you're watching from. But I did put a coat of satin over this, because I really wanted to be able to work with my glaze and control it, because I do want it kind of minimal. I basically want to bring out these moldings here and some more that I've added as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys in a little bit closer, and we'll get started with the glaze on here. So let me go ahead. So you're kind of close up, and let me actually pull you around to the side so you can kind of see where we're going with this. How it's really nice and dingy and aged out up in some of these areas, and then it really kind of brings out that raised damask stencil that we did. And I did do that live on the first video. It's not posted to my YouTube page yet, but you can find it in my timeline if you wanted to go back and see that. So we're going to start off just by glazing this panel. Oh, I almost forgot, we also did the Distressed Damask on the inside for a little pop there. I do have some chipping, and I've got some chipping on the drawers as well. I want to leave that. That was intentional because we're aging it out. I will end up chipping these out a little bit as well since I painted the hinges. So we're going to be using, just want to shake it up. We're going to be using the Van Dyke Brown Glaze. And like I said, I did put a layer of satin over this. I'm going to move this out of the way so that we can glaze this side here. I did put a coat of satin in between the paint and the glaze. So you can see glaze it's really kind of watery, not very thick at all. This is it's a newer container. Glaze goes a long ways, so I can't tilt it up too much. But I'm just going to be using, I may be using both of these, but I've got an art brush here, just kind of an older one to apply the glaze with for smaller amounts. And then I also have one of my Dixie Belle Premium Chip brushes if I want to apply the glaze in a larger area. So for us, I like to wipe my glaze wet, so we're going to be using some baby wipes, but you can use a wet paper towel, wet rag, or you can also wipe back dry if you want to leave more on here. So I'm just going to go ahead and really work. I just dipped my brush in the glaze, and I'm going to go ahead and really just work that into all of the details. You do kind of want to work in either small sections with the glaze or work with it pretty quickly because it does dry. Once it starts, well, of course it dries, but it does dry kind of quickly. And once it starts to dry, then you are unable to really get it wiped back here. Some people like to wipe it back dry and then go back over it with wet. I typically start with wet because I usually wipe a lot of it back. You can see I just wanted to get it in all the detail areas. And then I'm also going to want to put some kind of over where it meets the door, right along here. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and pop it in place. It's on rollers, so it makes it a little hard to pop. Also, my very last step, I'll be adding some Big Mama's butter to it, so it'll really make it slide a lot easier there. So I want to kind of go around the hardware. The hardware was an issue, so I went ahead and left it on and just painted it. But I am going to end up going over that with a metallic. And we're just going to kind of put some around the edges here where it might normally be darker, kind of more so along the bottom. And I'm going to start wiping this back. So I've left this, so you guys can see, I've left this area in here with only the paint on it, but you can see how I've drug that glaze up for kind of a more shaded-like effect. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. I'm just going to start wiping this back, kind of smearing it in. Sometimes I do like to dab because it gives it a slightly different kind of aged effect. So you can see how quickly this is drying on this side because I put it on thin. So I'm going to go a little bit heavier there because I want to be able to really, really wipe that back. I don't want it to be too dry. So we quickly want to do this. See where that kind of blends it in. I'm going to dab here. Like I said, that gives it a nice effect. But it is drying pretty quickly. So right now, I am keeping my baby wipe on the same, you can see how quickly it's drying. It must be really kind of dry in the air because normally it's not this quick. Also depends with the glaze how thick you put it on. So I'm going to thicken this up. It's really thick in the middle, and even though I put that on first, that's why I'm kind of waiting to take this area off. I am going to have to do some dabbing because I have let it dry too much, which is really odd because normally it does not dry this quickly and I glaze all the time. So we're going to come back to that because I'm going to show you how to fix that issue if that happens, but I don't want it to happen on the rest of this area. So I'm going to scrub back as best I can. Also going to go ahead and mist it with a little bit of water because that will help. And I'm using the dirty part here to kind of smear this glaze around. When you put it on really heavy, I would have an entire gray door if I did not, if I put it on too heavy. Because when you start wiping back, it starts to spread. So I'm really going to get in here in this area. We're going to come back and fix what I did with this glaze here. And really the way you fix it, normally you wouldn't have to scrub this much. You'll see once we go down to the drawer. That's really interesting that it dried so quickly. So I'm just getting in here and getting this excess out before we go back to fix what just happened with the glaze there. So I'm trying to get the excess glaze out of these center pieces. I want this to be really nice and dark in there on the edges, but I do want that light to kind of show through in the middle of those recesses. So I just want to get a little bit more off down here. And that's really what you're going for, is to just leave the glaze in the recesses. So you can see where it just came in way, way too thick around here and then just dried way too quickly. So to fix that, we're going to actually come in and we're going to pounce some glaze in to shade it and to blend all of that in. So what I'm going to do to fix that, hey Jo Beth, hey Karen. All right, so what I'm going to do to fix this, because you can see it just dried incredibly quickly. It left me with a little ring around here, which, like I said, sometimes that can happen, but it's kind of unusual. So what I'm going to do, I dipped this in glaze, and I'm going to wipe it back some. And I'm going to do a little shading with my glaze to bring that all together. Also, once I put the wax on, that'll take care of it too. So I'm just going to kind of dab a little bit here and there. We're still going to wipe this back. This is just going to help me kind of blend it out. Let's dab it down so it almost looks like it's dripping. Dab in here a little bit. Actually, it is not pulling that back. That just dried so quickly. Even misting it didn't do anything. So actually, wow, that really dried fast. So this video might be more about fixing what happens whenever you glaze. That's very, very rare that it would dry like that and just stick right on. What I'm doing here is I'm just kind of spreading that glaze around a little bit more, but I want to get this to a place that I like it, and that is definitely not where it's at right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this drawer open. I've got a Big Mama's butter that. Go ahead and wipe that back. I do want that crease there a little bit, I'm going to do I'm going to see if I can fix this with a little bit of dry brushing. So this might not be the best glaze video. So hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I've got this horrible, this glaze dried so quickly that I've got this horrible kind of line that I'm not really happy with there. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to blend that a little bit. And that's what I'm doing kind of right now. So I'm just dipping my brush into the glaze and just going through, pouncing a little bit. And by the way, this glaze is going to dry a little bit lighter than it is on here. That's why you see on this side how it looks lighter than it does right now over here. So let's dip just a little tiny bit more on here. We're going to go in around there. Now another thing I can do, because I've got some of this on, but I've got a little bit more than I wanted, and I don't want to wait too long, so I'm going to go ahead and just start dabbing it in here. It's going to pull back some, but it's going to leave some smudgy spots for me, so that it just kind of looks aged and a little bit dirty. Let's line out that inside a little bit. What I may end up doing too after this dries is to come back in and fix it to where I like it. Normally we would have been done with this part already, but I don't like how it's looking. So I'm gonna go ahead and shade this out a little bit more. All I'm doing is dabbing in. I'm getting a little bit of glaze up here, but that's gonna accentuate it. I'm gonna leave that there. Because as I continue to shade this out, I'm not going to wipe that back. That's going to work for me when I get to that part. And you know, I really love layering with this because it just makes it look so much more authentic, the grunge on it. Because this is a piece that was painted in a solid color. So there's no glazing or shading with the paint or anything, which you normally see me do a lot of. So we're going to kind of do that. Now, this is a little bit dry, but I'm going to dab it back a little bit by dabbing on. You can do this with a paper towel. You can do it with baby wipes. And sometimes I just go back and forth until I can get the look that I'm going for. And I'm going to go ahead and dab in here because this glaze is pretty well dry. And I tell you another thing that I do that I didn't do, but because of the way that this dried so quickly, I may come back, and actually I do like this look, but I may come back and do some dry brushing with the Silk Endless Shore over this, and that will kind of help as well. Yeah, because that's probably what I'm going to end up doing, especially around this mold. We may do that at the end, because even with what I'm doing right now, I'm going to go ahead and wipe it back a little bit. I don't like how that's turning out. So I'm going to bring you guys back in a little bit once this dries well, and we're going to fix this area. So this video is really going to be about how to fix your mistakes as opposed to how to use the product. And I will tell you, I am dog sitting and he's a little bit talkative, so you may hear him in the background going. But I've got most of that white back. But yeah, I'm definitely going to come in with the paint and do some highlighting and fix this area because it's got too much of a line. It doesn't have a smooth transition. Like I said, that's a little abnormal with how the glaze works. But we'll be coming over here. This is actually how it should have turned out. So like I said, we'll be going into how to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and drop you guys down because we're going to go ahead and glaze this bottom door before we move on to the wax and the Dixie Dirt. I'm going to go ahead and shut that though so you can see I have way more glaze over here. Definitely not how we want that to look. Give you a close-up. But let's go ahead and drop it down now. There we are. And I'm just going to go ahead and, because that dried so quickly, first of all, I'm going to mist into my glaze. Because I don't know if it was just a little dry on the top there and that's why that happened. But I definitely don't want that to happen again. And that's, like I said, that's really abnormal for it to dry that quickly. So what we're going to do down here is we are going to work on this mold first. And like I was saying, small sections, because that happened just a minute ago, I'm actually going to work in a much smaller section. I do want a lot of glaze worked into all the details on this molding. And this molding was poured using the Alumilite 10-minute resin. I do carry the mold products at the Rustic Willow in Ardmore. And I've got quite a few out there. I love my molds. They're reusable, they're food safe. So I'm just wiping this back. So this is actually more so how it should have looked. So you can see how it is wiped back on the top, but it stayed in all the grooves. So it's really giving that molding some dimension, really making it stand out. So now for this, like I said, I am going to do this in smaller sections. I'm going to go ahead and pull out my drawer just a little bit. And normally I use a screwdriver, but I did not get one out. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out the drawer a little bit. And this time I'm going to be using my premium chip brush, just a little bit of glaze on it. I'm going to start on this side. I'm just going to kind of do some shading along here. I'm just touching out the edges because, again, I don't want that glaze to go too far. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of slide it across. I'm using the same section to wipe back on my baby wipe because once it gets dirty, it actually helps you shade the rest of the drawer. So, you know what? I think what I did up here, actually, I know exactly what's happened up there now. I can tell by the way my glaze is wiping back down here. I must not have done so I do these in lots of little pieces. And I think that I did not protect this door, and that's why I couldn't wipe it back the same way. I'm pretty positive that's exactly what I did. Because see how easy this glaze is wiping back? That's a great example. When you have a clear coat over this, it doesn't sink directly, the glaze doesn't sink directly into your paint. Just want you guys to see here that I'm kind of dabbing it. I want some of that smudgy shading here. I'm going to go ahead and streak it out a little bit. It's almost like when you're streaking it out like this, it's almost like you're staining with your baby wipe here. I don't want to wipe too much back. If you do wipe too much back, you can just go right back on and put a little bit more on. I'm going to actually wipe back a little bit. So for this, I'm actually using the Van Dyke Brown Glaze by Dixie Belle. But I'm going to go back with a dry rag and do a little wiping that just kind of moves the glaze around slightly, streak it out a little bit more. So I went heavier on this drawer, so I'm actually going to go ahead and dab a little bit more on here. Want to dry out this brush because when I'm doing this dabbing, I want it to be more like shading. I want it to be lighter. So you can see how it lightened up a lot. I'm going to wipe this part back some. I got a little bit more than I want. I'll wipe it off there. So I'm just going to go in and dab, shade it out a little bit more. When I'm dabbing and it's more like a dry brush with the glaze, this part I will not wipe back. But I want it to look a bit grungy. Like I said, once it dries, it's going to dry a little bit different. It'll be more subtle, but it'll be slightly darker color-wise. So we're going to go ahead and work on this other drawer side now. I wiped a little bit of the glaze off. Make sure you guys can see. Actually, I am quite certain that on this other side, I did not protect it. Just get that on a little bit. Grab another baby wipe. Start wiping that back. And just dragging all that glaze very lightly over. We're just doing some layering with this. Very, very subtle. Very, very subtle. Now I've got I'm not adding more glaze. I'm just coming in to do some shading with the glaze now. Kind of moving that around. So if I want it to be a little bit thicker, like on these corners, I'm just dabbing a little bit harder, putting a lot more pressure on it. So it kind of gets that darkness to it. When I'm bringing it out, I'm dabbing lighter over here, so less of the dried glaze is coming off, so it's giving it that shaded effect. So let's go ahead, dab a little bit down here. You know, one thing about glaze, you really want to play with it and see what kind of looks you like if you haven't used it before, because there's really a lot of things that you can do with the glaze. I mean, there's definitely some dry brushing techniques. Let's go ahead and shade it out a little bit. Well, didn't mean to quite do that. So we'll just wipe that part back. And what I want to do, I think, well, I'll leave the rest of that for the wax. Let's go ahead and do this bottom section down here as well. And then we'll go ahead and let me make sure we have time. So I definitely want to get the rest of it in. Actually, we don't have a lot longer. So I'm going to go ahead. That's all you do with the glaze. So you can see how this drawer is shaded out. When I look at it in the camera, I think I need a little bit more over on this side. I don't want to go too dark. I've already put the drawer back in. But just a little bit over here. I'm just dabbing, shading. I think I'm going to come back with the BB wipe. Kind of just pull a little bit off, soften it up. Go a little bit darker down here. Actually, I'll probably wait to finish that up until I do this bottom section. So I've got some little sprinkles or, yeah, drips, whatever, that came off down there, but we're going to get to that drawer. So shade that out. I'm going to pop you guys back up because, like I said, I realized as soon as I started doing the drawer what went wrong up here. So my fix is actually going to end up being a little bit different. But we're going to go ahead and black wax and use the Dixie Dirt on the other door. So let's see here. So this is why I protect before I actually glaze. Because, and I should have known, I don't know, I should have known by the feel. You can really tell, but sometimes, like I said, I go in pieces, so I forget what I've done in certain sections. But see how that paint is more porous and it grabs it, and you cannot move the glaze around. Chalk mineral paint is even worse about that. It's going to soak it right in. You can't move it at all. So that's actually what really happened over here. I don't know if I'll just repaint it really quick and throw some stuff on, or how I'll fix that. So we're going to leave that alone now that I know what I did. So we're going to come to this door, and I'm going to go ahead and put this one in, and we're going to start using the Best Dang Wax and some Dixie Dirt. So I've got the Best Dang Wax in black, which is what we're going to be using here. And then I also have I have it in clear and white here. Oops. Well, clear and white. The white I have because sometimes I like to give like a little highlight to it. And the clear acts kind of like an eraser. So if you put on too much of the wax, you don't want it there, you can't pull it back, you just put a little clear on and you can pull it back with that clear. The white will pull it back as well, but it's going to give it a little bit more of a highlight. You can see the white here and what that looks like. And I'm going to apply the wax in a few different ways and with a couple different brushes as well. I do have a lint-free cloth here because that's what I use to buff it out, as well as to pull back any wax. We're also going to be using I'm a little disorganized today. You know, grocery shopping, Thanksgiving, everything, I'm just not there. But we're going to be using the La Petite brush, which is a nice wax brush. You can also use the Best Dang Wax brush. There's a lot of different brushes you can use, but you want a natural bristle brush. I also have a premium chip brush that we're going to be using to soften and shade. These are really nice too, even if you cut them down a little bit, if you're wanting to do like some really soft shading in corners and stuff. And then I've got this nice pointed art brush. It's a natural bristle brush as well. And this is so that I can line out some areas. So the wax is a little bit different from the glaze, obviously, but and I'm going to tell you something else because I'm going to be using different places in my wax, depending on what I want to do. So around the edges, my wax is very hard. In the center, it's more soft. My wax is pretty well used. You can see this stuff goes a long ways. Like I said, excuse the dogs. I'm watching my daughter's dog for Thanksgiving. She just got here last night and he's really barky. So the first thing I'm going to use, I want to use the center because that's the softer part of my wax. I'm going to take my lid and I'm going to kind of do this in here to wipe some of that excess wax off, smear it around my brush. And for the molding, I want to put wax all over this molding. So what I'm going to do is just start working it in here. And the reason that I like glaze and wax together is it just gives it a lot of depth and dimension, but there are times when I use them individually. You can also mix your own glaze too with I like to use the clear coat to do it, but if you want a specific color, just want to work that in. And then I also want some nice heavy pinstriping kind of in some of these areas right here. Like I say, your wax does take 15 to 20 minutes. So if I actually wanted it to look like this, I would leave it alone and then I would come back and buff it out in 15 to 20 minutes. But this is not my final look. So when I'm dipping this brush into my wax, I'm using the harder stuff around the edges so I can get more of a thick pinstriped look. It's going to be heavier. And of course this looks crazy right now. But just going to kind of go ahead, do some of those areas. You don't have to go into this much detail, but I like to. So now I'm going to go ahead and I want to pull some of this back, buff some of this out. It's going to kind of pull some back and it's going to create a nice shadow here. Some more aging. Also, I'm going to tell you what I did yesterday. I painted in a way that when I was painting my piece, I could add some natural splatters onto here. So I have some speckled spots on this piece that this is also catching on. It's a very subtle thing, and I'm not sure if it's even going to show up on camera. But I can see here, like, some of the places it's sitting. So, of course, I want the raised areas to be kind of nice and bright. Just want to make sure I pull it back enough. And get in some of these areas, clean that out on the inside. And you can use a Q-tip to do this if you want to. I'm just going to kind of wad this up, put this in here, because I'm going to be doing some other stuff as well. I just kind of want to get my finger in there. Wipe a little bit back so it's got some dimension. So now I'm going to add some Dixie Dirt. So Dixie Dirt comes in 3 different colors: ash, earth, and charcoal. I'm going to be using charcoal. You can use this with any of the waxes, but it does need a wax to adhere because it is literally a powdery dirt. So what I'm going to do here is I've got a brush that I'm just using for dirt. You can use the same brush, but a little cross-contamination, which, you know, I generally get cross-contamination anyway, to be honest, because I just do whatever I want to do to make it look the way I want it to look, usually. So I'm just adding a little bit down here. You can use the Dixie Dirt with like clear coat, and when the clear coat's still wet, you can put the Dixie Dirt in it and age it out that way as well. But you can see how it's so much more pronounced now. And then you can go ahead and wipe that back some, wipe back whatever's loose on the dirt, but it does have to have something else to make your dirt stick. But it does truly give it a nice, authentic look. All right, so now what I want to do is, especially on the raised sections, I want to brighten them up and really make that mold stand out. So I've just put a tiny bit of the white wax on here, and I'm just going over the high points to really pull some of that dark back and really brighten it up. Really make it stand out. And this wax, because I'm not using a brush, is just highlighting those raised areas. When you're using the brush, you're really getting it down into the details. So that's pretty much it. That's how we're applying here. Oh, hey, Lori. Oh, hey, I do see some comments coming up now. Well, we did have a little situation at first with the glaze on the other door, but figured out what was going on there, and really good lesson about why you want to make sure that you protect in between the paint and this. So now I don't want my waxes heavy on here. So first, again, got my black wax. I'm going to kind of dip into the side, and I want to really add more of a pinstripe look to my edge here. And I'm just going to kind of, I want the shading coming out a little bit, because, you know, if you have an issue with blending, like you just aren't comfortable with it, you haven't practiced or whatever, you can really shade with your waxes. By the way, you can tint your waxes with paint. It doesn't take very much paint. You don't want to use a whole ton of it anyway, because you don't want to mess with the integrity of the wax, but you can make a wax in any color you want. You can make navy wax, you can do whatever. And you can shade with it. So it's not going to look that horrible. I'm actually going to take the La Petite that we were using initially, and I'm going to soften this up first. Bring out that pinstripe a little bit, bring that aging over. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that all the places that I made that really dark, heavy line. I'm going to just bring this over. I think I probably want this wax one a little bit up and down. I want to make a nice heavy line here. Hopefully I've protected everything else but this door. Because this is another thing with the wax. If you put this on and you haven't protected in between, you're not going to be able to work the wax like this. Also, your eraser clear wax trick is not going to work very well because that paint is so porous. It's just sucking the wax right in, and it's not really movable. So right now, I'm going up and down specifically because I kind of want to keep in line with the paint. I want this to look kind of natural. And so I'm rubbing hard where I want it to brighten up a lot, but I'm rubbing much lighter where I want to keep more of the shading intact. So you can see how that's changing. I'm going to go ahead and add some of the dirt now. When I put on the dirt, I want some along the bottom here. Just enhance that shading. You can use all 3 color dirts too. That gives you a nice layered-like effect. And you don't have to go as slow as I'm going. I do go slower on the lives. I'm more conscious of what I'm doing. But when I actually work on my pieces, I just go through and I see what I like and I just go from there and how I want to do it. So I'm just going to go ahead and wipe back any of that excess Dixie Dirt, which looks great down here with the chips. So I've got too much right here, but I suspect maybe I missed that in protecting too. But I'm going to put a little bit of that clear wax on here and just pull it back some. I want to switch places though because I don't want to do that too much down here. And I've got some excess dirt over here. I'm just wiping that off. So that's it. You can really, really age out. See the difference between this side and this side? So then let's go ahead and go over here. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to start off with my black wax. I'm using this. So on the sides, it's kind of hard. It's not as soft as the wax normally is. And that's the best way to use it to line out. I want to line out these hinges. I obviously want to age these hinges really well. I'm going to even go on the other side of this some. So all I'm doing is kind of scrubbing over to get some of that shading. Not worried about how it's going to look because I'm not worried about how it's going to look because I'm going to come back in and soften it up with my buffing rag. So if I was doing an all over wax, that's really probably about the only time I truly give it, that 15 to 20 minute time frame to really set up. And we're going to line out this down here. You can also do a dry brush technique, and I'll maybe show you. I don't know if I have anything to do that on right here, but I'm just going to thicken that up some. So you can take this brush. This is the premium brush. Oh, hey, Susan. Satin. I'm using a satin clear coat. And that's where I messed up with the first glaze we were doing. So I just put a little bit of wax on the end of this brush. This really isn't what I'm doing on this piece, but just to show you guys. So let's say you want to line out a corner like these edges on the sides. You can go like that, and then you can soften it up by just sticking your brush in and pulling it out. And then you'll kind of see here in just a minute. Let me go ahead and do some on the top like this. You can also dab the wax on. There's a lot of different ways. There's no wrong way with these products. It's just experimenting and seeing what you like. So down here you can see kind of how it looks when you dab it. And I don't want everything to be just exactly the same. So this is perfect here. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to soften all of this up. Again, I'm wiping back very lightly here because I don't want to take too much off. But when I come into this section, which I want to be lighter and brighter, I'm rubbing a little bit harder here. I kind of want most of it off here on this edge. I want to keep that pretty bright. So I'm going to soften this up where I did this along the top, but I want to leave a lot of that on there. So I've got more than I wanted, a little smudgy over here. I'm just going to push harder and rub that back. All right, so kind of liking how that looks. Now I'm going to take my Dixie Dirt. Oh, and I just did a little cross-contamination. I put that, I do it all the time. That was my glazing brush. So see how the Dixie Dirt kind of just it's literally dust. And that's why you need something for it to stick. And it really creates a neat effect whenever you use it with the clear coat. But I'm just dabbing it in here. I really want to get it into some of this heavier wax in the corners. It creates a very unique look, the Dixie Dirt does. Definitely want to get it here around these hinges. Just because those are, you know, typically aged and more dirty. And plus these are going to chip out. If they don't do it naturally, I'm going to chip them out. So you don't have to seal after this because wax is a protectant in itself. You also don't have to seal after the glaze, but I do. I want to lock all of this in. So I typically will protect with a clear coat after this, but I did protect with a clear coat in between the glaze and the wax. And I want to kind of bring this other door over to show you the difference, but at the same time, that thing looks so horrible, I don't even want to touch it. I don't want to see it right now. I'm trying to think if I ever have before. I don't really think I've ever glazed without putting a protectant in between. I did test it out on silk when it first came, and it does wipe back better than the chalk mineral paint line, but it still grabs it. Well, like you could see how it grabbed it and held it. All right, so that's it. But see how much detail comes out even past, so you can still see some of the brown highlights in here. It's just definitely giving it that authentic layered look. And then you come back in and you see some of the charcoal from the Dixie Dirt. You've got different areas that have the black wax. So all of that just makes it really unique, makes it pop. And that door looks totally different than, like, for example, this part up here. You can see the difference in the aging, how much this mold, which only has the flat paint on it, pops out. And you can even go back later once this has dried and dry brush that if you want an even more exaggerated effect. But that's it. And I did go a little bit over on the time, but we're on my page, so it's not a huge deal. And however I decide to fix this drawer, I'll make a post and tell you guys about it, maybe a before and after. But oh, hey Mike, how are you? Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know yesterday I did the live and I kept thinking I'm forgetting something. I completely forgot it was Thanksgiving. But yes, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week. Lots of good food. Let me just make sure I didn't mix any questions too before I pop off. Yep, so Kathy asked about the product between the layers, which the satin clear coat. Oh, thanks, Lori, on my shirt. Yep. I always say suck it up, Buttercup. I was in the Army, so I love this one, chin up, Buttercup. But let's see here. Oh, thanks, Lori. And then what product was I using for shading? So I grunged it up a little bit first with the Van Dyke Brown Glaze. And then I came back in with the Black Besting Wax and the Charcoal Dixie Dirt. And I do have the other Dixie Dirt here. I'll show you it. And then I did add a little bit of white to brighten it and make it pop with the wax. So this is Earth. It's kind of a more grayish brown tone. It has more tan in it. And then this is Ash. So this is more like a light gray color. And you can mix these Dixie Dirts. You can also use it with the Easy Peasy Spray Wax, which is a super easy wax to use if you're using that as a protectant. I like that for smaller projects. Ones that don't have a lot of use and don't require that extra protectant, like a big piece of furniture. But again, you guys, thanks so much for hanging out today. And you take care. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a great week. And I will be back live next Monday on the Chalk 101 Paint Company page. Take care.